Bhaskar Bhat's journey is a masterclass in building enduring businesses, not just scaling them.
With over 4 decades of experience across consumer and manufacturing sectors, he began at Godrej and Boise before becoming part of early Titan Company Limited story through the Tata Watch project.
What followed was a 30 years association with Titan, including 17 years as managing director. During this time, Titan did not just grow, it reinvented itself, expanding into eyewear, accessories, fragrances, and saris, while building a market capitalization of over 13 billion US dollars.
An engineer from IIT Madras and management graduate from IIM Ahmedabad,
Mr. Bhatt has been recognized as distinguished alumnus by both institutions, a rare distinction that reflects both credibility and contribution. Today, he brings that depth of experience to multiple boards across FMCG and hospitality industries.
Beyond business, his work with Sir Dorabji Tata Trust and associations with organizations like IITM Pravartak Technology Foundation, Pan IIT Alumni Reach for Gram Udyog Foundation, IIM Pact, and as steering council member of Shankara Eye Hospitals reflect a consistent theme in his journey, which is building institutions that outlast individuals.
Thank you, Bhaskar, for being with us today. It's an honor to have you on Broadcast, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to interview you and where we can hear from you on your views about what does good governance look like and about the leadership itself. We look forward to learning from you from your journey, your leadership at Titan, and the perspectives that you bring about long-lasting institutions. Now, let me start with my first question. Bhaskar, when you look back at your years at Titan, especially as the organization grew in scale and visibility, were there moments when the decision felt more complex despite all the robust systems in place?
Naturally, yes, it did. I can't say it didn't for two reasons. One is the India that we are experiencing today, and primarily Titan is an India centered company, was very different. Uh, when we started as a company, and thereafter, when I started as head of the company, and today. So, three things that have changed. One is the market itself. It has become so large, so diversified. It was always India is a diverse country, but the unearthing of various segments and opportunities, and Titan making those choices to enter those product segments like jewelry and eyewear and apart from watches made the company complex. The second is regulation, which is uh, over the years, the market has become much more organized and regulated. And because of regulation, complexity naturally creeps in. You have to be able to deal with that regulation. For example, gold is a it's not regulated in the true sense like you regulate banking and finance, but because of various problems in that sector, gold is like cash. There has been regulation. The last is really the company's own. We were a very people-oriented company, but bringing performance in from only people orientation versus people plus performance again brings, if you stick to the same ways of doing work, you do not mature as a company, you do not progress. So therefore you do face challenges of change and challenges of growth.
Thank you, Bhaskar. You talked about Titan being a watch business where 80% of the margin or revenue came from watch business and being the fifth largest manufacturer in the watch business, and then diversifying into jewelry, into eyewear, and then further expanding to the household needs of sari, perfume, skin products. Even if it had not got diversified, revenue would still continue from the watch business, but might not be at the scale that it is today. How did the board come to this decision, and what were some of the key consideration in making this decision happen?
I think having entered the watch business in the late 80s, and we realized that the company had a few competencies like manufacturing, marketing, distribution, consumer understanding, and of course, a Tata name. Now, jewelry as a category, we uh, entered for a very different reason. We needed foreign exchange for buying, importing equipment for making high end watches when we entered the European market. But thereafter, we realized that the Indian market itself was very potential and very large, um, as in 200,000 crores. Now, of course, it's much larger and very unorganized and highly fragmented. Perfect for um, a company like Titan to get into because such a market was waiting to be transformed. And now that's a big call. And the board did deliberate. There was a lot of opposition. It was my predecessor, the founder of the company, really, Success Desai, who, under his stewardship, Tanishq was launched. Uh, it was difficult, early days, but the company had belief in the emerging Indian woman, how she would embrace branded jewelry from a trusted player available across the country. Many principles of marketing which are very different from the family jeweler. And the board, I wouldn't say it's only the board. I think it's the promoter, the management, the board supporting it. Um, Patient capital, as they say now, supporting the early losses. But I think overall has turned out to be a great success. And thereafter, it has led to many other businesses.
Now, when anybody talks about Titan, it's almost synonymous to trust. Okay? Um, do you recall moments where protecting this trust meant slowing down? Because trust needs a long, deliberate investment in the long term. Did it mean slowing down or saying no to few things, even when the business logic meant compelling against saying no to it?
Yes, and it is in small things as well as big things. So, if I were to take the example of when GST was introduced, the level of GST for watches was very high, 24%. Now, Titan always believed in working with its um, business associates, treating them as partners. Now, when GST was introduced, it was a big hit uh, on those guys because uh, you know how GST is. It's on the value addition at every stage that you have to pay. So the watch business, because it was built on trust, and we would be saying we'd look after your interests, and the company figuring out that this is not, it is nobody's fault that GST is at 24%. And the the promise that we had made to everybody that we would look after them. The business didn't need really to take that call because we can easily have said, sorry, it's a government tax, you have to pay, you have to pay. But the division took that call saying we will bear. And you won't believe it, because of various other initiatives with the government that we took. From 24%, it came down to 18%. Now, it's a at 24%, they were going out of pocket. At 18%, and therefore, company would have to reimburse and so on. I'm just giving this as an example where it's a test. Do the business associates then really trust you? Same thing happened. We had a brand called Gold Plus. We had 29, 30 odd stores, and it was in jewelry, and it was making much less money than Tanishq. And for various reasons, strategic reasons, after 10 years, the division said we should close it down, and we did face up to those franchises. Because the franchisee said, now, you asked us to open, we opened, we bore those early losses, and we have been working at this business at low margins. And the management, and I remember that day when we were confronting them saying, sorry, we're going to close down this business. But we converted all of them. And my successor, CKV, who was at that time the head of the business, said, we'll convert all of them into Tanishq stores. So all of them were retained. And now that we could easily have said, it's our call. In the contract, it says we can give you X number of months of notice. So I think these were, yes, decisions which should have gone the other way as well. But I think the basic
Conviction of
even on what is that, demonetization day, the same thing. None of our large number of stores, not a single store, crossed the line on accepting cash after 12 midnight. These are all that kind of trust is established with the law, not with your customers. So we didn't get raided at all, not a single store.
interesting. Trust, while it's business, it's also about people, like you said. And I have personally heard that you have made a lot of decision and you've ensured that trust is long built with people. Can you quickly touch upon that element? Because today, and people are our assets at the end of the day in any organization.
Yeah. I I think the belief, company belief, Titan's belief system is based. One is trust. I mean, Tata itself is trust. So, and therefore, that's the foundation in a way. In our business, especially jewelry, trust is the cornerstone. That we will not cheat on the quality of the diamond or the caratage of jewelry and so on. Now, trust can't be in one element only, that with the customer, etc. It has to be a behavioral thing, cultural thing. So what we wanted to build was, we long back we decided that we are not just going to be a company or an economic engine or an organization. Let's build an institution where people feel a sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging, if you have to have a sense of belonging, then trust is again the basis of feeling that sense of that. If I give my best to the company will prosper, and that prosperity will be shared with me. That kind of virtuous relationship we wanted to build, and we built it successfully. At times of distress, the employees would again understand. Trust starts with transparency. You be transparent from the top, and trust gets built. And it has held today, in fact, Venkat, who succeeded me, went beyond institution. He was saying, we are like family. The whole company is like family. And you reach out to people in the family when at times of crisis. At the same time, the relationship is uh, one of trust. So I think it has helped the company scale great heights because the employees trust the institution.
Yeah. No, I think you also touched upon very key element. It's not organization but building institution, and that takes a different level of thinking. Thank you for touching upon that, Bhaskar. Now you've been the CEO, managing director at the company, and then now you're at boards. Has the decision making angle or the lens changed? Because when you're CEO, you're making decision. Now you're actually designing the whole thing.
Yeah,
How have the
actually, yes. In fact, uh, despite my reluctance that I was asked to continue on the Titan board for 5 more years, but I realized that for my own sake and for the sake of primarily the person who succeeded me, my own approach to my new role has to be totally different. And therefore, the next day, I have to wear a director's hat and not a managing director's hat. Now, what that means is that you transform your thinking from doer to enabler, you know, and be open to all your decisions that were taken the previous up to the previous day be questioned for the sake of the institution. If you are still in that mode of institution building, then I, to me, it wasn't very difficult because somehow I, I and all my colleagues didn't use the word I. I built Titan. I did this. I did. It has always been we. So
small thing, but that matters?
yeah. So and I didn't feel like that also. That I was the one who launched this, or I was the one who uh, talked about institution building. Yeah, those were my beliefs, but all of us collectively believed in it and built it.
Now, from the board member angle, do boards sometimes feel more confident than they perhaps should be in certain scenarios? Is it because of the financial understanding, operational complexity, or the culture signal? Are there signals that tend to be oversimplified or overlooked from a board angle? Is there a pattern that you've seen?
I've been on many boards, as in many industries, from manufacturing to aviation to agri products. And the industry context has to be removed from the board is governing the company. Okay, so in fact, very successful companies. I'm talking about financially successful companies. If your question is, does the board get complacent, saying, okay, things will going on? The y- yes, but board members, are they aware that their job, again, the success is thanks to the promoter and the management? The board is just there helping to go. Again, enabler, you know. The dream of the promoter is being translated into action by the management, and the board is the enabler. So, if members of the board understand that role, then success or failure doesn't really affect you. So, the complacency comes when you forget why you're sitting there. And I can only say that culturally, also, what you said, culture, complexity, these can confuse you. But when you're sitting in a board at that board meeting, you have to be as rational, as demanding in a successful company as in a not so successful company. The signals typically are when successful companies, when they, in one quarter, when they slip, if if the reasons are externalized, no, we are below target because market was like this and competition was that. It's typical. And when those things are told to you, your antennae go up, saying the manager not owning up. You mean you didn't know that the market was going to be so bad? Unless it was COVID-19. That's a different matter. You know, I mean, Air India, unhappy plane crash, for example, unfortunate. Those things,
Are an exception.
but otherwise, people generally tend to externalize. Whereas unsuccessful companies work hard. Again, there you have to be demanding, saying, you set yourself a stretch target. If you underperform, you should know why you underperform. No excuses. We excuses are for somebody else to manage, but we just want to understand
Transparency.
what happens and what you didn't do.
Thank you. I think the fact that you mentioned, we just quickly bring in the external factor, and that's so true about so many meetings that happen. Thanks for highlighting that, Bhaskar. Now, Bhaskar, you have talked about people first and also talked about restraint as a leadership quality, right? When performance is strong, and again, expectations keep rising, which we have seen in many organizations, because the strong performance leads to higher expectation, and it's now said that, okay, we need to maintain that expectation. What makes restraint genuinely difficult to practice?
Actually, restraint is difficult to practice if, like the people who are debating a topic. It's called playing to the audience. Performers, rock bands, superstars. They perform to the audience. We get energy
Theatrical.
from all the cheering. Okay, that's good in that
Business.
business. Whereas, at least we believe that all the cheering will stop if you underperform, and all the criticism will be there in any case. So the expectations of the external world are what are the most difficult to handle. The restraint is what core philosophy you have adopted and core strategic choice you have made in a certain business. Let us take a good example is jewelry. When we were growing beyond our expectations and the market was giving us all the credit with the market cap, and there would be very aggressive investors who would say, you guys are expanding at a very, very slow pace. You're putting up 30 stores, you should be putting up 200 stores. And at that time, to restrain yourself, saying, because there were a lot of other businesses who were doing this, saying, expand. Now, that expansion, if it is not quality expansion, that is, in that 31st store, can I have the same experience and people trained people who can deliver as in the best store. It it was discomfort for us if we can't do it.
And that leads to downfall also.
Yes. So not yeah, so your brand gets diluted as you go into that mode.
Correct.
So unless you build capacity before, I mean capability of the back end capacity, you can't build the front end. I'm giving this as an example. So expectations usually drive you, and people will put you up on a pedestal and say you're capable of doing that. Now go ahead and do it. So unless you know exactly what your company is capable of and where the pitfalls could be, uh, and yes, people have said we have been a little uh, conservative.
But that's helped you grow. That
I think so. I think it's the brand.
it's it's the people who made the brand too.
100%. There's no doubt about it.
Now, Bhaskar, as a leader, how did you personally tell the difference between healthy confidence and the early signs of becoming too comfortable with things? Because that's a very thin line in a lot of places.
Again, the companies, one more, uh, let's say, uh, value choice we made, and which again was thanks to my predecessor, which is that we should be in a constant state of flux. That is, we should never settle down to comfort. Yesterday's truths are today's heresies. It's like that. So, what was possible yesterday can become not possible today. And
Bottleneck.
therefore, being a little paranoid about it. So, the company, therefore, continues to be a restless company. That is, being dissatisfied, even at the level of excellence that you achieve. There is still that the customer is one step ahead of you always, and you're playing catch up, is what you have to adopt and down the line tell people that there is always room for improvement. The moment you say there is room for improvement, and not, yes, you have to be critical, you have to find out where that improvement, leadership can't just say improve. You have to go and say these are the areas where we believe we can do much better. And if you do that, your own sense of satisfaction will improve, customer satisfaction will improve. That will bring in more customers, that will bring more revenue and profits, etc., etc.
This is somebody who has worked with you quoted that you made decision because we talked about trust, business, growth, and everything. And all of these are constraints, or all of these are parameters that you live as leader every single day. People who worked with you take a lot of pride in saying Bhaskar is people person, right? And they quoted saying you actually made decisions when it came to people, keeping long term in mind, while it had short term business impacts or short term impacts that you had to explain to a lot of people as to why you're doing. Because today, at the drop of hat, it's easy to say, hey, margins are low, cut down on people. But you had made very strong decisions. Would love to hear something on that.
Yeah, I would say that um, because of the kind of businesses we are in Titan, and retail, hospitality, all these, aviation, all of these, the differentiator is the service, and the service is delivered by people. It is a little beyond that in a product company because the product is what the people buy, Unlike in an airline, it's a service. Hospitality is again, you know, the comfort of the room and the efficiency of the service. People deliver all this, and therefore, for believing in that, and therefore building a very strong uh, both skill, competence, and commitment uh, driven organization, uh, it was important to invest in people. So, our formula was, if you want to achieve customer first, you have to treat people first. So, invest in people, and they will in turn treat your customers and bring joy and happiness, and uh, the customer comes back. Therefore, uh, I don't know if if they have credited me with that. That's their generosity. But as a company, it's a strategic advantage, strategic uh, competence in the company, and it's there in. I know, for example, in the other Tata company, IHCL, Taj, the warmth in the it doesn't come through training. It's not a false smile. It's a genuine desire to serve the customer. And across the Taj hotels, they're able to recruit people like that and get them to behave like that.
And that brings me to the element of culture, because I think this is the culture that is running throughout as the DNA of the organization, right? And culture makes or breaks the organization. A lot of times, um, there are a lot of things that get filtered out and does not make it to the top. What, as an as a leader, what is an early sign for you that indicates the information is getting filtered before it reaches to the top, even if it means unintentionally? And what were some of the things that you ensured to bring in the transparency in the culture, that consistency across businesses?
I think as a leadership team, again, it goes back to trust and transparency and accessibility. Accessibility, not from a physical point of view, keeping the door open kind of thing, but true accessibility is where the last person in the organization feels comfortable, not threatened, to talk to the most so called powerfully endowed person, because the MD is the guy who gets comfortable to talk about anything that he or she feels. It's not that he will take advantage of that. So I remember once at the end of a session with employees, I just said, I am open to take calls from any of you any time after 7 p.m. on Saturdays. I'm just giving you this. It just came to me intuitively. And my board members, one of them was quite shocked. You mean you told him? I said, yes. I, uh, I just felt like that they should have access. And you won't believe it, very few people called. Some would call, and the word spread. Actually, he takes the calls. Okay. And you can do silly things also, saying, whatever, my workplace is not comfortable or something. And slowly they realize, there are other people to whom we can take these problems. And it's not about why disturb him. He's available at any time. So the whole management, that access that you provide, so people don't then hold back. Uh, yes. How do you sense if they are holding back is your question,
Yeah.
I think also. These are, ugh, it is impossible. Frankly, management, when I'm in the board, I know that what management presents uh, is what you get. And so we, more and more as board members, we actually go down to operating plants and and the marketplace. And in as a part of management training, I mean board training, we actually go to see where the rubber hits the road, how it works, and so on. That's one way. So that
But there's a very interesting thing. I've, at least personally, not many people, I've not heard many people talk about board training.
yeah,
It's
oh, we do that in this company. I chair it. We've been to the field twice, Punjab, Amritsar, Bangalore. Actually, go meet distributors, dealers, etc. That's a part of the training. Saying, understanding when the sales guy says something, do you understand? Okay, going to the plant, talking to the people in the plant. You can't do it as often, but it is important. Uh, and getting the next level in the management to be present at board meetings and to present to the board. That's another way of understanding. But the signals that you see are typically, of course, that comes with experience, is when managements overemphasize a trivial point. And when a question is asked by a board member, they won't sideline the question, but they would
talk a lot.
talk a lot and externalize the reasons. This happened because economy is bad, or you know you have to be able to. And I think I would err on the side of the person to make him more comfortable, that look, he shouldn't feel that there's going to be dire consequences if he discloses, versus feeling that the board is here to help. So if he presents it as a problem, I remember in one board meeting, my management, I mean, the people sitting next to me were shocked, because the capex requirement of a certain business was approved at a certain level, and they made a mistake of a reasonable size. It was, if they wanted 25 crores, they actually needed 40, let us say. So that part of the agenda, I said, I'll take this on. I won't let the business guy do it. I started by telling the board, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. It should have been 40 crores, but we presented 25 crores, and we need your approval. The guy sitting next to me said, why did you do that? We could have explained. And I said, listen, the first thing is, it was a mistake, no? So the whole it took 5 seconds for approval. The board said, these guys have said it. If it's a mistake beyond that, where is the question of? So people think boards are like, waiting to pounce on some, uh, errors you make. So again, I'm talking about the relationship between management, board, promoter. Has to be of a certain kind if you need to have a sustainable, well run company. Not necessarily always making lots of money, but that sense of institution. There are very small companies growing at a 8-10%, where the culture is so good. They're not looking for, you know
Higher EBITDA.
yeah, no unicorn status and all that. They just created a nice small company which is growing at a certain pace, but they give a lot of importance to all these values and behaviors of a certain kind.
Bhaskar, as a leader, as you reflect on your leadership journey, what is one lesson about judgment or governance that only become clear with time, that you feel is still easily overlooked by many leaders? And if you have to go back and reflect on that one change that you can see in yourself.
Yes, I think this the extraordinary success we saw. We had very big problems, and I do, I credit the team that was there with me at that time for having navigated through some very difficult times. And then we saw success. The restless company, thing that I spoke to you about, we should always be looking for new things to do. I do feel that today, that restlessness, the pace of restlessness, I today I would be more thoughtful about uh, what new businesses to enter, how. I'm not saying reduce the pace, but be more thoughtful, do more in depth understanding. An idea is fine. The sari came as an idea to me. And then we discussed and discussed, and then we made it into a business. Eyewear, again, came from one of the people. I think if in the early days of jewelry we failed badly, Seven, it was an idea. But an idea has to be built into a business, not just that you have an idea and it can become a business. You have to do proper market research. You have to ensure that you have competence. You have to ensure that you have a strategy and patience, versus the restlessness taking you to multiple business and you don't have the organization capability to execute on that. I think too many businesses, too much on the plate versus thoughtful entry.
Too much on the plate versus thoughtful entry is a very punch line, right? Because that itself requires deeper thinking than what everybody is looking at.
Yeah, but I admire that young people of today, they are restless and they take risks, and they said we'll manage the consequences of the risk later, which is a great attitude. And I'm saying this, I'm accepting that I'm not in that mode, which is make mistakes, that adage, which is, you know, early failure,
Yeah.
fail fast,
Fast.
whatever that is called, burn cash, learn fast, and so on. Yeah, I think that's made many of them extraordinarily successful very early in their businesses.
But thank you, Bhaskar, for being with us. Every word you've said is priceless. I am sure the listeners or the audience, whoever, the intent is for all of us to learn through your lived experience. And it's a great honor to have had you with us and learn from you. Thank you for this conversation. It's a privilege to hear from the master himself who's carved out.
I think you give me too much, weight of being master and all. I did what I did, what needed to be done, and I had a great team, and Titan continues to do well thanks to the team that is there. And on other companies, I just do as a director what needs to be.
It takes humbleness for a great leader, as they say. Thank you. It's a pleasure having you with us
Thank
today.
you for this.
And
Thank
for all the
you.
work.
And all the best. I hope it helps.
Absolutely. Very, very precious learnings.
Thank you.
Thank you.